All right, welcome back to Rock Doc's Reading Room. All right, where did we leave off? So, I just met with Pink Floyd manager Steve O'Rourke and sound genius Peter Watts, who was my friend, and he turned me on to Steve O'Rourke. And my company has been now hired to go on the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon tour. Now, they had been on tour with Dark Side of the Moon 1972, but they were about to release the album in March of 73, and my company was hired to go on tour with them. And so let's start the reading, and then we'll take it up from there. Okay, and of course, it's from my book, Rock Doc. All right. So, my team joined Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon tour during a short U.S. segment in March of 1973, the same month that the album was released. I was in Europe with ELP. I was still on that 4-month-long ELP tour that I told you about that you saw the movie to. And so I was in Europe with ELP, but my partner, Jim Morris, was in the States, and he went out with them. And we would talk, just about every day. You have to understand, on the ELP tour, my company did everything. We actually produced the tour, we created the stage set, we provided all the equipment, sound, lighting, road crew, etc. It was different on the Dark Side of the Moon tour. Pink Floyd had their own stuff. They needed my sound, lighting, trucks, truck drivers, road crew. So basically, my job was just to make sure that my people were okay. Peter was fully in charge of sound, and of course he knew my sound people because he was the one who helped me get the sound company, and Arthur Max, the lighting director, was totally in charge of the lighting, and my lighting people also knew Arthur. So in many ways, when I did go on the tour, I was just a spectator, and Jim was just a spectator, but Jim had other things up his sleeve, which you'll find out about in a later chapter. All right. Okay. Okay. So what I want to tell you about, though, is so I was still on the ELP tour, and I want to tell you a few more things about that tour in Europe, a few more stories that are not in the book. So the opening act on that tour was a band called Stray Dog. And strangely enough, I actually named the band. What happened was during one of their U.S. tours, one of their people, I think in Denver, had heard this incredible blues band from Texas or Louisiana with this amazing guitar player named Snuffy Walden. And he was so blown away, he told Greg Lake, and Greg Lake heard them, and Greg Lake said, when we get a label, we're going to sign them. So by the time I had gotten to London, they had the label Manticore, and I was living at Greg's house, and Greg just kept telling me about, oh man, wait till you hear Snuffy, blah, 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 blah. Okay, finally, they decide to sign the band, and there was a band meeting, and we're all in the office, and they say to me, all right, Neil, you're the new guy, you got to name the band. Name the band. I never named the band. At any rate, I came up with the name Stray Dog, and it stuck, and they came over to London, and they came on the tour that I did with my production company. It was after I had already left as their tour manager, but now it was my production company. And if you saw that movie that I posted, you see this crazy long-haired guy with this sort of, I think it was a shearling coat, and that's Snuffy. Interesting thing about Snuffy, we went on the tour, great guy, incredible guitar player. The band broke up shortly after that, but Snuffy went on to fame and fortune. He moved to LA eventually and somehow got into the TV world. And so I'm sitting in my apartment. I'm a doctor, and I would relax. I'd watch these stupid TV series, and I turned on, I think, 30-something. And at the end, and I'm listening to music, and at the end, I see the music by Snuffy Walden. And I can't believe it's the same thing. Well, long story short, Snuffy got into the TV world big time, particularly with Aaron Sorkin, and eventually he won an Emmy for his work on West Wing, and he did a million other TV shows, Roseanne, Ellen, Friday Night Lights. I mean, amazing. A year or two ago at the Woodstock Film Festival, I see this film is going to premiere called Up to Snuff. Up to Snuff. And it's about Snuffy. I couldn't believe it. I made contact. I saw him up here. Great movie. It's going to be streaming soon, so check it out. So that's Snuffy Walden, Stray Dog on the ELP tour. One more quick story about that ELP tour. I haven't talked much about Keith Emerson. And Keith Emerson and I also became quite friendly over the years. And I had kind of a special role with Keith in that I carried the knives that he used to stab the organ. If you ever saw his performances, you know what I'm talking about. And one of those knives was very special because when he was in the Nice, they had a roadie named Lemmy. And yes, that's Lemmy from Motorhead. And Lemmy, when he left to form his own band, he gave Keith this incredible knife, which is one of the knives that Keith used, and I used to keep it in my briefcase, obviously, before TSA and things like that. But that was great. So we sort of developed a relationship around that. Another thing that I did for Keith, which was unbelievable, was when he would do his solos, he had something called a ribbon controller, which is this long thing, made all kinds of noises, and it was on a very long cord. And much to my dismay, every night he would jump into the audience with it, and I would have to follow him with some big-ass roadies to make sure he didn't get hurt. And I talked to him every day, every show. I said, "You're not going to go in the audience. You're not going to go in here." Yeah, and he did it all the time, and fortunately nobody ever got hurt. But, Keith was just this incredible guy, man. Soft, quiet guy off stage and just this monster on stage. And yeah, we got to be friendly even after ELP. He invited me to his house in the Bahamas. We went on a boat and we went fishing, and great guy. I miss him, and at least we have his music. All right, let me get back to the book. So that was the ELP tour, Snuffy and Keith. All right. Now, while in London, the band was doing 2 gigs at Earls Court. This is, I'm talking about Pink Floyd now. So they did this, they did the tour, came back to London, and before they went out in March, when I was still in London on a break from the ELP tour, I was in London, and Pink Floyd were going to do 2 gigs in London. Okay. So, while in London, the band was doing 2 gigs at Earls Court. Peter invited me to a rehearsal. He was excited for me to see one of their new tricks. I couldn't believe my eyes. They had the balls to fly a relatively big model airplane on a guide wire from the back of the venue to the back of the stage, simulating the plane's destruction right above Nick Mason. It was great. Maybe you saw the tour and you know what I'm talking about, but it was amazing. All right. The Dark Side of the Moon tour caused a real buzz in London, and everyone wanted a ticket, even other rock stars. Carl Palmer called and asked if I was going. I invited him to come with me. Peter, by then, had perfected his version of surround sound, and the band sounded better than any other band I ever heard. Aside from the airplane, there were cool pyrotechnics, 4 black backup singers, and a sax player. Carl and I left shaking our heads. I gotta tell you, he was blown away. Carl's the one member of ELP I haven't talked much about, and later on, I'll talk a little bit more about him. But obviously, we also had developed a relationship. It was really fun turning him on to that, and he freaked out, as did a multitude of other rock stars who were there that night. Okay. The next part of the tour was in the States again, but this time the venues were much bigger, mostly outdoor stadiums. A couple of guys in the crew knew a great sign painter. This was a great story. A couple of guys in my crew knew a great sign painter, and they had been out with Jim on the part of the tour that I wasn't out. And they said, for the next part of the tour, we've got this great idea. And I said, okay, well, so what was your idea? And their idea was, well, we know a great sign painter. Why not paint the Dark Side of the Moon album cover on two of my trailers? Whenever possible, my drivers would drop the trailers on either side of the stage for effect. I mean, it cost a bit of money to do that, as you can imagine. These guys were incredible sign painters. And they took, the prism with the rainbow going through it, with the light going through it. And it was on huge panels on these 40-foot air ride trailers. And again, we would drop them when we had these outdoor concerts that we were able to. We drive the trucks in, drop the trailers next to the stage, and it made this incredible stage set. Not that Pink Floyd's stage set was bad, but the addition of this was unbelievable. All right. I went to about 13 shows, all on the East Coast, with the first at a stadium in Jersey City, Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City. Don't know if you've ever been there. Not the nicest venue, especially back then. It was not a really nice venue, but it didn't matter. We lit the joint up, man, let me tell you. The trailers parked by the sides of the stage looked amazing, and the production was state-of-the-art. It wasn't until years later, though, that I came to fully appreciate the music. Don't get me wrong, it was great. But it wasn't the same as smoking a joint or two and listening with headphones. Besides, I was working. Yeah, I wasn't working like I worked on the ELP tour, but I still had to make sure things were cool. Peter would ask me to do various things. Usually, I would sit with Peter at the mixing booth, which was an incredible place to sit for that. And he was just a wizard with what he did. Arthur Max was a wizard at lighting. Amazing, man. I wish I could remember more of the 13 shows that I went to. I don't have much memory of it. I remember Roosevelt Stadium. I remember the last show was in, I think, Fort Lauderdale. I remember sitting around the pool with Peter and various other members of the crew. Again, didn't spend much time with the band. They kind of knew who I was, but we didn't have much of a relationship. But I wish I had more personal stories for that tour, but unfortunately I don't. But it was an incredible thing, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it. All right. I didn't hang with the band much. I spent most of my time with Peter, the crew, and the backup singers. The tour went well. Peter and Steve, the band's manager, were satisfied. So much so that after the tour, Peter approached me about doing more work together. The concept I had thought of a few years earlier was succeeding, and I was hitting my stride. Peter and I did go on to do some more tours, which I'll talk about at some other time. And that's about it for today. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me get my thing up here for you. All right, the book's not in chronological order, so I'm going to go back to Edgar Winter and back to the days in New York, and I'll come back to the ELP US tour and tell you more stories about the music business before we get into other areas of my life. All right, have a great week. I'll see you again next week. Thanks for visiting me at Neil Ratner's Reading Room, and remember, keep on rocking. Bye.